Conversations with leading experts in enterprise resource planning. Evolving ERP. Powered by Insight Jam.
Back at it once again. We are here with Evolving ERP, Insight Jam spot for all things enterprise resource planning. And of course, back with us again, we've got Dan Aldridge. Welcome back to the show, Dan. Always a pleasure to have you. And for the first time, all the way from Spain, we've got Daniel Mateo. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, Dan, you know from past episodes of Evolving ERP. Check them out right down below. And you know what? Don't do that yet. Just go ahead. Go right down there. Hit the bell if you haven't done it. Hit the subscribe button. Go ahead and do that. You got to do it. Go ahead and do that, okay? Now that it's done, you can come back to it later. Check out Dan's history. But being as it's your first time on the show, Daniel, if you could give us a little bit of your background, your story, how you got into ERP. I know everybody's story, as I'm finding out on the show, is wildly different. So I'm very interested to hear yours.
Yeah, so thank you so much for inviting me. And I started around 17 years ago in SAP world. And at that time, I was finalizing the degree, and an IT consulting company, they offered me to start as a developer in the SAP area. At that time, I was starting with finance and also with logistics, but I was always willing to improve or to have more business understanding. So at that time, I decided to move from development to more functional part in SAP, and then more project management roles. And currently, yes, I'm SAP project manager and focus in international projects in SAP area for finance, management accounting, and logistics as well.
Oh, excellent. Fascinating. So you might hold the record for the longest career consistency of anybody who's been on the show, or at least starting the earliest in ERP. It sounds like you've been on the track for ever since the university days.
Correct. Yes, since I was 23 years old until now, I'm closer to.
Okay, 40. So you live and breathe this stuff. This is well, not quite in your DNA, but what's the other? I don't know, mimetic memory, something like that. So actually, I'm very excited to hear more and to let this conversation take off. So Dan and Dan and Daniel. Okay, two Dans. All right, excellent.
Good name.
Well, I hope you find even more common ground on this conversation, and I'll get out of your way so you can take it away.
Well, hi Daniel, how you doing?
I
wanted to give a shout out to Barcelona first. Barcelona. Sorry, I said it right. That is a beautiful city. One of my favorite cities on earth, actually.
Really?
I visited there when I was about 30 years old. I actually worked for a Dutch company at the time, an SAP competitor called Baan at the time. And I was traveling all over Europe, and I went to Barcelona. And I saw the most beautiful building. Well, at that time, it was just in its very getting started, I guess. La Sagrada Familia, I think it's called, right? The cathedral there.
It's not yet finished.
It's not yet finished, right? It's been going for 50, 60, 100 years. I don't know.
Yes.
But man, I think it's getting probably closer, much closer, where you can you go inside of it?
Yes. You can visit it, and you can go upstairs and then see.
Oh, nice.
You have
it was just kind of the facade when I went there, but I stayed on Las Ramblas.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
very touristic place.
Had a great time. Very nice city.
You should come back.
Another shout out. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
You should come back again. So you are invited.
Yeah, I definitely will. I definitely will at some point. Maybe bring my family this time. So, but anyway, I wanted to also give another shout out because we share a group together, quite a large group, LinkedIn group and a WhatsApp group called ERP Gurus. So that's the hashtag ERP Gurus. And it's a really great collection of very knowledgeable SAP consultants, and they let one non-SAP consultant in there, and I think that's me. There are great conversations going on in there, and there's some guys that are involved in training and implementations and various things. Very, very talented SAP consultants and project managers and solution architects and so on. So I wanted to give that kind of shout out that we share that group together.
Correct. And it's very interesting. So every day there are posts from all the people involved that they are very interesting and amazing.
Yep.
The ERP community.
So you are you're an SAP finance consultant, right?
Correct.
And so you said you started off in technical. That's kind of how my route was. Actually, I didn't do it right out of university, but I got an MBA in finance. So I'm actually a finance guy. So I would say we've got lots to talk about, and lots of similarities in our careers. But how did you get into the finance piece? Did you have somebody say to you, hey, everybody has finance, we need finance consultants? Is that how you got into it?
No, that was funny. So when I started, I was even not sure what is SAP. So I was just looking for some logistics processes and then try to improve software. So I always like IT, but my background was logistics, or I was chemical engineering at that time.
Oh, wow.
Then I applied for multiple IT companies, and there was a company that offered a training. And the main prerequisite is you should start first as developer. And then, depending on how you are fitting, you will then be assigned to some projects, and they were checking what is also your interest. So at that time, I started taking classes with ABAP, all type of interfaces, more technical way. And while I finalized the course, they offered me that I can join it was a Greenfield implementation. And in this project, they were also finance and logistics were together in the same group. So there were different areas. One was HR, another was kind of all the management with the customer and some of the document relationship for the public sector, and the other was finance and logistics. And then I joined that for beginning as logistics, but I got some opportunity and there was a vacancy in finance a few months later. So then at that time, they offer if I want to start performing this, and then I was also doing an MBA at that time. So
okay, that's the exact path that I took. But I would say that I got the conceptual training, and I always tell people, if you want to get into something, in the ERP world or something related, that it's nice to get the conceptual training first, the concepts, and then move into learning the software. Because at the end of the day, right, it's SAP, it's Infor, it's Bond, it's whatever, right? It's just another ERP package, particularly in finance, which tends to be very, generic.
Similar.
It's all debits and credits, right? All debits and credits. And it's just, how do you do those journal entries or whatever? Right?
And since that time, I always stay in finance. So I have a background in logistics. I also know how logistics work, but mainly finance, management, accounting, all the projects related.
I love finance, and people think I'm crazy to say that. But I love finance. I love management accounting. I love cost accounting, which people are like, what? And basically I'd say that cost accounting gets me close to the shop, right? What's going on in the shop and measuring variances and all kinds of different costs and how that makes up the cost of a product and how that makes up margins and all kinds of things like that. So I always found that very fascinating, and it kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of move out of the ivory tower up there with the finance people and move down onto the management of the shop level and things like that. I work in manufacturing, so I find manufacturing very fascinating. I found that the finance people separated themselves from the logistics people usually, And the finance people, more so than logistics people, had to learn about the other. Right. So basically, I would say I need to test the financial integrations, right? I need to see when I receive a PO, what happens? What are the T accounts? What are the costs that hit and why? Right. So I did a lot of my own orders. So I do purchase orders, do receiving and do shipping and warehouse moves and all kinds of things like that, which were logistics things, but I needed those to get my financial transactions.
All right.
So I found that I tend to learn more about the whole system. And I don't know if you found this to be true, but you said you were a logistics person. So I imagine it is true. The finance people have to know more about logistics than the other way around.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Logistics people don't tend to, or technical people, they don't tend to want to know what's going on with those bean counters over there, the accountants. Right. That's what I found to be true. And that made it even more interesting for me as a career choice. ERP, I've been doing it for 25 years, and you've been doing it for most of your career, if not all your career. So, you know, what I'm saying is that it's a really interesting career, but I found that as I learned more and more about the processes in the industry that I was in and how they affect the financials and doing the logistics transactions that make up the, you know, what I have to do in terms of orders and shipments and all kinds of things like that to affect the financials, the more interested that I became.
Yes. No, and at the end, finance, it's always the receptor, or he's getting all the different postings from all areas, from HR to logistics, CRM, and all the different modules are well connected to finance. And at the end, you need to ensure that the month-end closing figures are as expected, and also the management accounting. So the costs are really important to have it with the cost object and being sure that you can then have the month-end closing reports as you expect.
So help me understand a little bit more about SAP. So the FICO or the FICO, that's the financial module within SAP S/4HANA. Is that true?
Yes. So at the end, FICO is a module that was since the beginning. It's not only for S/4HANA, so it was in all the SAP implementations you can have. Maybe it's FI, that it's purely finance or accounting. And then you have a CO, that CO is controlling and management accounting. And you have all the cost objects and the margin analysis to get what is the profit of the company.
Okay, so the controlling is more, the CO is more the cost accounting and the allocations.
Correct.
Maybe part of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And also the reports based on the cost objects.
Okay. So with S/4HANA, what's the main difference between like an ECC and an S/4HANA when it comes to finance?
Yes. So in finance, there are some advantages since there is the universal journal entry. So you are having all the information in finance in one table. And this is the single source of truth. So in previous versions, you have multiple views and multiple tables that in some cases you may have some differences or some deviations in case that there was some wrongly update of values. But in S/4HANA, you have only one unique table that this is the source of truth, and then everything that you are posting, both finance and controlling, goes to this table. And then you can get very detailed reports based on that. And the user is also more confident that there are not any deviation from past versions. This is one good improvement. Another improvement is the Fiori. Fiori is, the Fiori that is kind of user-friendly. Now it's more easy to get connected with web browsers. You can also use mobile devices and more PDAs or any more easy. Well, it's more easy to get connected with web browsers, and the user is more willing to use the new functionality. And
so that's the UI.
Yeah.
That's the UI portion.
Correct.
Basically, the skin that sits on top
Correct.
of the processing engine, which is probably not that much different from ECC, I would guess.
Well, it's changing a bit, so you can use in the mobile, and the workflows are more automated rather than in previous versions that were more old-fashioned way, and some users can struggle a bit. And also you can build your dashboards, and you can have more detailed analytics on top of the S/4HANA.
Is that something separate? Is that a separate module or package for BI that sits on top?
Yeah, so you
is
can
it
get
part of
the SAP Analytics
S/4HANA?
Cloud. Correct. That
Analytics
it's
Cloud.
an
Okay.
add-on. It's an add-on that you can implement. It's optional, but it's highly recommended. And then
Oh, yes.
connected to SAP, either finance, logistics, or any different table, and then you can build dashboards and a very detailed report as well that they will show what is the different characteristics, and it's very useful, and it's web. You can get connected to any web browsers for that.
Does SAP have like an iPaaS or something that brings the data into a data lake or so you can have different sources of data that are outside potentially?
So at the end,
Outside of SAP?
you can get connected. So SAP has an integration platform that they call, well, there are multiple of them, and every year they are changing, but you can have a platform that got connected to the reporting tool, or even this reporting tool can get connected to Infor, Oracle, or to any other ERP. Just you need to build a connection, and there is then extracts every 30 minutes or every hour, and then you have the reporting tool on top of S/4HANA, but you can also have it with another ERP. And then with their tables, you can build the different reports, similar as Business Warehouse, but more user-friendly.
Very important piece. I'm glad to hear you say that too, that it plays nice with other ERPs and things.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out.
Tell me if there's, are there any kind of common misperceptions that people have when you go into you're going into a client or a prospect that has S/4HANA or is looking at S/4HANA? Are there any common misconceptions that people have about S/4HANA?
Yeah. So one of the biggest misconceptions is that they only link S/4HANA to the HANA database. So long time ago, it was around 10 years ago, SAP decided to change a database, and it's in memory. And this database is more powerful since you have all data in memory, and you don't need to have it a hard drive to read it. So it's quicker to get access to. But that was 10 years ago since the beginning. And they link S/4HANA only to that database. But at the end, S/4HANA is a suite that has this database for sure, but a lot of functionalities on top of that allows to improve the user experience. So you have plenty of tools that you can run within this database, but also you have new functionalities for group reporting that it's for consolidation. So if you have multiple entities, in previous versions, there was another tool that was called BPC that is still being in use for some old companies, but you can use group reporting that it's in S/4HANA and allows to perform the consolidation in the companies that you have in S/4HANA, or even companies that are in another platforms. And then this is also a very powerful tool within the S/4HANA environment. And also the business partner management. So you can build all the vendors, customers are becoming single unit instead of having vendors and customers separately, and you can have duplicate ones. In S4HANA, it became business partner, and it's one entity for which you can define if this entity will become vendor, customer, or both of them, or multiple tools. And sometimes the business, what they don't realize, they think that it's a technical change. If they want to implement S4HANA, they think this is IT, but that's not true. So at the end, it's recommended to change the processes and also to be sure that business is fully aware what are the changes that S4HANA is bringing to the company and try to improve their company processes in order to fit what SAP recommends for S4HANA.
We have almost identical situation, right? We have business partners the same way, customers, suppliers, even internal customers or suppliers, just based on roles within the master data management there. We have what are called the process catalogs that are basically the flows, the end-to-end flows like procure to pay or order to cash or whatever kind of flow, and then allows you to drill down ever lower to actually get to the actual sessions in the application. So it's a really nice way. It's an easy way to modify those processes too. They're not set in stone or whatever. They're not rigid, kind of flexible to allow them to redefine that with the consultants. But yeah, that should be done up front, right? We don't want to run into any of these processes that were even in the old system, in an older version of the system, an on-prem version of the system, some rigid process that needs to be changed.
Correct.
With software.
Change management is very important. So sometimes companies
there we go.
are always difficult to start new processes or change the current processes. And with S4HANA, it's also a good way to focus in improving the processes and then changing the mindset of the users to start using new tools that will improve for sure the performance.
So another question for you. What's the first piece of advice you would give for a company going into an S4HANA conversion, let's say, from ECC?
Good. So the first piece of advice is first to define what is the goal and the main objective of the project, and being driven by the business. It's not an IT project, so it should be it's IT who is supporting business to perform the project. So we need to clearly define what are the roles and responsibilities for each of the different stakeholders. So they are aware that they need to participate, since we are running the first workshops with the functionalities in SAP and define what are the fits, or if we need to have some, or we have some deviation with the standard, and be sure that business understands how we are planning to deliver the project itself and be part in all the project, since at the end, business will be the owner of the process and they need to understand.
You're going to leave.
Yeah.
And they'll be stuck with it.
Yes, at the end, IT is supporting it, and they can provide which solutions can help to achieve this project. But at the end, is the business people and the users who will run the program to be sure that they are fitting their expectations. And also, it's important to have a clearly communication with them, showing all the progress that any program is doing, in order that they are fine with that and they don't get any surprise during the testing. So in most of the projects, or in some of the projects that they participated, business is not joining the session until the testing, and then they realize that the program does not work as they expected. So a paper, it's easy to, or during the design, they can sign a paper, but then this design can differ a lot of the real program. And then when you test the real program, they mention that this is not the way of working. So if they are involved since the beginning, we are always avoiding that. And also to have a very strong change management. So change management team is pretty important. So they need to identify all the processes, which changes, which are the benefits that the business will get with these processes, but also what are the risks of changing some of the current processes, what are all the people involved, and communicate in advance to all the users that they should be aware about the new process and be sure that they are confident with that and supporting the change. If they are not supporting the project, then it can be risky to implement it.
That's ideal, of course. That's ideal. And I would say we would recommend the exact same thing. I'm curious about customizations in ECC and how you handle, because what we do is we typically do a survey of all the customizations, and we find that a lot of them are, say, reports in the old system. So maybe in ABAP, I don't know if it's ABAP or ABAP, if you did a lot of programming and created a bunch of reports that were just simply trying to get data out, right? We typically go through that and get a spreadsheet if we can, and redline those things and try to eliminate as many as we can by using BI or using, you mentioned Analytics Cloud in the case of SAP, but we have our own different analytics platform. But how do you handle ones that you can't cross off the list? You go to BTP or something like that, or you say that, hey, this is what it'll cost you to reprogram, or do you try to change processes to get rid of those customizations as many as you can and cross more off the list? I'm just curious as you do.
A good question. And usually what we have is a template that it shows what are the standard processes and what are the allowed deviations. So there are some deviations that are by standard allowed, just switching some tables or some record that is configuration. But what is the recommended approach? Only changing the legal requirements. If there are legal requirements due to taxation, for some specific local reports for each of the different countries, and some statutory requirements that you need to fit, those ones for sure are being considered. But if it's kind of processes that they are doing in that way as they consider that is better, we need always to rethink and propose what SAP standard can offer, and then work with change management in order to try to adjust the current processes to fit into SAP. If for some reason it's not allowed, then we need to have a design authority or some architect that needs to approve the changes, but they should be very reduced and always defining in the scope what are the changes. And once the architect or any design authority group approve them, then they can go to the technical team that they will assess how long will take and if we can get all of them during go live or not. But ideally, we should reduce as much as possible, and the approach is only legal requirements to be changed. And for reports, they have some tools that they can even build their own reports based on objects that they are already pre-delivered. So they should not ask for hundreds of reports, only with 3-4 reports. They should then build their own reporting options.
Okay, but if it's, let's say it's a logic change,
Correct. Yeah. If it's a
Right.
logic change,
That has to go to BTP, right?
correct. You will need then to reach out to the developer. So in case of it's, for instance, in Analytics Cloud, there are some developers related to Business Warehouse that which they will need to adjust the cubes or the objects that they are reading the data or the structures to get this data in place. If there are, for instance, new processes to be implemented, then it's needed to be assessed. If you can build a new application on BTP, for which this application will be a standalone application that you will need to define the input and output, or adjust some of the existing applications in within the ABAP development team. But
So
it's
I got
not
another
documented. So ideally, it's
No, that's
keep it,
good. That's good. I like
keep it
this. I
simple.
like this.
And
Very
now,
nice.
even with the new cloud solution, so S4HANA has 3 different ways of deploying. So if you are going, there is the on-premise and then private cloud and public cloud. Public cloud is share the database within other clients, and SAP already delivers all the upgrades. You cannot have many changes as you wish. So if you want to have any change, you need to build it directly in BTP with a specific platform, but you cannot touch the core. So you keep clean the core. You cannot change anything. And then if you go to private or on-premise, you can do more adjustments, but then every upgrade, you need to implement it by yourself, and there is more tasks to be performed during each upgrade, and you need to retest more carefully. And SAP is
Okay.
pushing
More
for a public.
flexibility, but less
Correct.
help from SAP
Correct. Yes.
in that respect. Yeah. So it seems to me that I've heard that the on-prem S4HANA is going away, so that people who did that in the past will still have to go to either private cloud or public cloud. And I think most go to private cloud if they're on ECC. Is that right?
Yeah. So SAP is pushing to go to the cloud. And then there are still a lot of customers, and bigger customers are a bit reluctant to go to the private cloud. So the costs can also be increased depending on the number of hours that you are working and the capacity of the server. It can be increased much more than expected, and you should have always a connectivity with this provider. And some bigger customers are not still thinking to switching to this cloud private server, for which you have your own server in Amazon or Azure, Microsoft, or any provider that you can have.
Hyperscaler.
And yeah, correct. So your database is on that provider, and then as long as you pay the fees to this provider, you can get use for that. What is the problem? That if you need multiple environments and always running all those environments, the cost can increase a bit. And sometimes the license are not fully clear. You sign for 1-2 years, but then you never know what may happen in 3-4 years in a row. But that is the guidance of SAP. They are pushing to get to on cloud, at least private. If you want to go to the public cloud, it's difficult, so it's less flexible. You should have doing an assessment and be sure that the processes fit to the public cloud best practices that SAP deliver. And then once you are sure that business are capable to run all the processes with this standard version, you can go to the public cloud.
I would guess most people would go private cloud in that case, right? They want the flexibility, and they they do have customizations that they can't get rid of, including logic ones.
Correct.
It gives them a little more flexibility with the BTP. But do you find that this decision here, the two dates, the 2025, which is I think older than EHP 5 up to 5 or higher of ECC, which is difficult because they don't have my understanding anyway, they don't have the extended maintenance there.
Correct.
So pretty much have to go up there by the end of 2025, which is right around the corner.
Yeah.
So I know that quite a few people, I've seen estimates of half plus, have not started on that migration yet.
Correct.
You find this is causing a lot of fear, maybe? I don't know if fear is the right word, but resistance from the customers, because I think you understand why SAP does it, right? I mean, everybody understands why they want to move everybody to the cloud, right? They have control, they switch them over to a SaaS model, all those things that they want. It's better revenue, better profitability for them. Customers, maybe not so much. They're like, well, we kind of like what we have with ECC, and we customized it, we built it over many years, 15 years, 20 years, whatever it was, and we kind of like the way it is. It's running well, and we don't want to change. Do you think that this is enough to cause people to go away to other vendors, or they will just maybe get into a scenario where, you bring in like a Rimini Street? I talked with Scott Hayes from Rimini Street last week and a couple weeks ago, and he was saying that, SAP is of course, the biggest customer, with Oracle close behind, I think, but they give them 15 years to make the decision, right? They don't shut them off from the cloud, but they say, hey, we'll support you and we'll maintain your customizations. We'll do all of that for 15 years. And it kind of gives them a lot more flexibility, right? If they like what they have. Do you see people tending that way because they're not all that pleased by the deadlines?
Yeah, so I know some companies that they already had previous versions that they are now obsolete, for sure obsolete, and they are still without maintenance, or they have still the basic maintenance and they are doing by themselves. If they need some change, they can do it. But what is the risk? If there is a bigger change for taxes or some legal requirement that it's kind of
localizations,
invoicing,
big deal.
Yeah,
I would think.
All the electronic invoicing and some of the new banking files, then you may struggle a bit with this old function. So SAP will not deliver any change on top of that. But for the more recent ERPs, the 6, they already extended to 2027. So if you are in the 6th version, that it's the previous of S4HANA, you just need to upgrade to the top of the ERP before S4HANA, and then you are still allowed to the 2027. So what companies they do is they do the latest upgrade that they don't require so much more investment, and they keep on the latest one without switching to S4HANA, and then they wait next year or 2 years later, 2027. Yeah. And I assume that SAP will extend, maybe the costs will increase of the maintenance for sure, but there are still 30% of customers that they are considering to switch, or it's the low percentage still to change. So I don't think that all the companies are suitable to switch to S4HANA before 2027. And also it's a big cost.
Yeah, and I think, well, you probably know better than anybody, being an SAP consultant, S4HANA certified SAP consultant, how much of a crush this puts on the SAP market, right? I mean, you're in a very good position.
Correct.
Right? And your finance too, extra special.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're enjoying your position with that. But it creates a real problem for customers though, right? Because they got to go in the market, and maybe if they're going to pay $500 an hour or whatever they pay, right? They're going to pay whatever they have to pay. And with an SI or even an independent, it's going to be very expensive. There's a huge risk there is that they can't get the correct people for their project, right? And especially if they're a customer that, I mean, in the SAP world, right? If you're $1 billion, you're kind of small, right? They're so big that, you could be $1 billion company that is competing with a $10 billion company that's willing to pay more, and there goes your consultants. So I think that's a big risk. And I am part of ERP Guru, so I don't want to say anything wrong, but I know that there's a push to get the right team, and the people that are part of ERP Gurus are some of the best SAP consultants in the world in that group. I know that group, right? It's a really, really top-notch group. And then they offer companies like Zarentech, right? Offer the SAP training, which is very important to get that training and certification for your people internally. So I think that's probably the best group to make it, but it's going to be a lot of pressure, and it'll be interesting to see, how that shakes out, or whether SAP does kind of like a Christian Klein. I can see him being pretty much doubling down and saying, no, it's still 2027.
I assume that it will be extended a bit. The fees will increase.
I think it will too.
But
I think it's a little bit of a, it's a tough situation that they put themselves in, right? To insist on that and ranking some customers. They will lose some customers over there.
Yeah, my concern is that if you are pushing them to switch for a given time frame, they will do just a Grongli project. So they will just try to copy paste the programs that they have into on-premise, and then they will run similar processes, but just in a new environment. And then customers will not be happy. So they are not improving processes. You need to have time to focus in the project and do the things right, not just doing the same way as you are doing in another system.
Yes. I mean, this is what we say, and what we see is that we do business transformation or digital transformation projects where ERP is a part, and it may only be 25, 30% of it, right? In the past, it was everything, right? The upgrade of your ERP system was the project, but now it's bigger than that. Now it includes other systems. It includes, connections between systems and APIs and iPads and business process reengineering and lots of different components. And I think the same as you. I think that if you do that, just because you need to meet a date, then you miss out on a huge opportunity. And it's actually not, your business is going to maybe take a hit because you're taking these old processes and messy data and all kinds of things in I guess SAP, or maybe anybody calls it Brownfield, which would be, or lift and shift. I don't like that term very much, but if you're just taking it up to the cloud as is, you're A, missing an opportunity, and B, you're putting yourself in danger. It's introducing a lot of risk that you're running new processes with old data and processes that have to fit, and customizations that may or may not be there yet, right? Which there's something missing. There's some file that you're in Brazil and you need to produce some crazy tax thing or whatever. I know how these localizations go. I'm sure Spain has its own. US has crazy sales tax regulations, for instance, that the new software won't have that, not out of the box necessarily. And it might be something that you changed. And so to go Brownfield is I think dangerous. People think it's the least risky, but in my mind, it's not. It's not the least risky. I think it's the most risky, and it may be the cheapest, and it may allow you to meet a date. Simply migrate, run an engine. I don't know how SAP works in this instance, but some sort of run these engines and do data migration and all of this stuff in a very short time frame, but lock in those old processes that are broken
Correct. Yes.
right?
In the long
Processes,
run.
if you're talking about ECC, they could come from the year 2000, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you're saying, I got to move all of that stuff by end of 2027. That's, less than 2 years now, right? A little more than 2 years, actually.
Yes, a bit more.
3 years. But, anyway, it's not a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I'll find it very interesting, kind of how this works. I'm in favor of, there's a Greenfield, which, probably would be more the clean core and let's start over and all of that stuff, which is not probably palatable to a lot of people that have a really highly customized ECC system that they're used to. They're not going to want to do that, I think. Greenfield. So there's something in the middle called the Bluefield, which is kind of what I would recommend to my clients, which is a hybrid, right? You clean up data, you move some things and not other things, maybe keep history back and put it into an archive company or something like that. Use a BI tool to consolidate all of that stuff from the past, right? And don't junk up your system, but also migrate only the processes that need to go in that form, and then take the standard if you can, right? It's kind of a hybrid method.
This is what the most companies prefer. They prefer.
Good. I'm glad they do that in the SAP world too.
Yes,
I think they prefer.
But in my case, I prefer a greenfield implementation. It's more investment, but in the long run, it will also improve the processes. But you need to have a commitment from business that they are willing to start a new system. But it's a huge investment, and you require 1 year and a half to get a proper greenfield implementation with all the systems up and running and without any impact in the business operations. At the end, you are starting multiple processes from scratch.
Yeah, and that's also got its risks.
Yes.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, no, ideally that would be the way that I would go too. But realistically, I think it's more of a blue type hybrid approach. And then also from a project management point of view, there's different, you've got your waterfall and you've got your agile methodologies, and we use kind of a hybrid between the two. So frequently a hybrid is good, to take the best of each. And then, if you're sprinting with this agile thing and which could give you faster results, is a positive, but culturally, sometimes that's hard. And people are used to a milestone, and you reach a milestone and then you go to the next one, which is more the waterfall type. So you have to pivot sometimes in your project management approach. And I saw you had PM on there.
Yes, that's right. So currently, the hybrid projects are getting more common, and at the end, being fully agile is not feasible in a bigger project. If you are trying to improve some processes or to build some of the tools, yes, you can do it. But a full project where there are 10 teams involved, it's not feasible.
Very hard to do it. Yeah.
So the mindset.
Prototyping, it's kind of good for prototyping, but for a full, transformation project or an ERP implementation within a transformation project, it's a lot of waterfall tends to creep back in there. That's the tried and true method. So being an old guy, I know that method the best too. So
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today.
Do you think that SAP's brand recognition, and everybody knows SAP, and given what people know or perceive about SAP, do you think that's a negative or a positive, or just it is?
I think SAP is very well known, at least in Europe, and all the big companies, or most of the big companies, they use SAP for manufacturing. I think it's pretty good. So they standardize the processes, and you have very strong ERP that links all the manufacturing processes within all the different modules. But that's true that there are some limitations. Some people are not really happy with related to the old-fashioned transactions, that they are not flexible. Main concern, companies that are switching to SAP, that they will lose the flexibility to adjust some processes, or mainly in accounting. What is the main problem in accounting? Once you have any finance document posted, you cannot change it anymore. You need to reverse and then post it again. And depending on what was the fail, you need to go back the full process to then post again. So in some cases, the user needs to redo many tasks in order to get it correctly posted, and some companies are a bit reluctant for that. But you will get all the finance statements and all the different reporting for sure very accurate, since you are doing all the steps as expected. And I think in Europe it's very powerful for mid or big company size. They are very powerful. For small companies, the public cloud version is not still well known, and they are a bit not willing to do it. So they are preferring other ERPs that are more focused for small or mid-size companies.
Right. And mid-size would be for SAP would be like 3 billion.
But I know some companies that they have, it was funny. So I have a friend that it was a factory that they were just producing clothes, and it was very small company, but they only install SAP since they recommend it, and they was kind of fashion. So if you have SAP, you are in the latest trend for doing that. But they were having only one finance company, and it was kind of 20, 30 employees. I know it was a very strange implementation, and it was not recommended, but they put SAP only for having this brand in the company. It was funny.
Well, Daniel, it's been a pleasure. I mean, we could talk finance for hours, and just ERP in general, but I love the finance angle. So it's been a pleasure to talk to you about it.
Well, it was my pleasure as well. It was, time flies.
Yeah, fascinating conversation, gents. I was Dan. I'm glad we found another finance focused person to finally relate on that level. And I think you'll be proud of me, Dan. I think it finally clicked with me. Brownfield versus Bluefield versus Greenfield.
Okay.
I think I have an understanding between editing the episodes and the conversation right now. I think I'm getting it. I'm learning. I feel very good about myself.
Yeah, and why the preference?
Yeah, Yes, exactly. Yeah, the difference between the ease right now versus 10 years from now. I think it's there. And
we'll
hopefully
make an ERP guy out of you yet. So
yeah, it's slowly but surely. Yeah. And hopefully our viewers too, if you're coming into this from, little to no experience, or, looking to get started in that career, hopefully you're picking up these bits of knowledge and on a deeper level than I am. So Dan, if folks, maybe one of those listeners wanted to get in touch with you, find out more, maybe read some of your writings, how would they be able to do that? Could you let them know?
Sure. So the main way is the website is pcgservices.com. That's Providence Consulting Group. And I'm the marketing director there. And LinkedIn, I have tons of articles, and I'm busy moving them over to Insight Jam as we speak. So I'm getting some articles over there as well. And we do the podcast, of course.
Of course, yeah. Check out Dan on LinkedIn. And of course, as Dan mentioned, you can come on over to insightjam.com if you want to read Dan's writings and the writings of many other enterprise resource planning and just enterprise technology professionals, enthusiasts from all over the world. It is a focused social media community on that. Daniel, how would people, where should people reach out to you or see what you've worked on in the past?
So currently it's just by LinkedIn. So they can reach out to me. Yeah, LinkedIn, I participated in some of events for SAP Inside Track and some of the SAP communities, but my main focus is LinkedIn, and I try also to share some knowledge on that, so people can also contact me.
Excellent. Well, we will have that link right down below. And of course, if you made it this far and you haven't hit that subscribe button, now would be the perfect opportunity to do that. Hit that bell, hit that subscribe, and that'll let you know when the next episode of Evolving ERP is out. It'll be 2 weeks from when this drops, or hey, I don't know when you're listening to this. Maybe it's already out. Maybe going through the back catalog. If that's the case, hi, and we'll see you next time. All right, but Dan and Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks so much.